I used to think I knew my daughter better than anyone. But the night she stopped calling me mom, I realized I didn't know her at all. We live in a quiet coastal town in Maine, the kind of place where the fog rolls in every evening like a blanket, and everyone waves when they pass by. My daughter Ava had always been the light in our home, baking cookies with her little sister Mia, helping her brother Caleb with math, singing while she cleaned the kitchen. And then, one day, that light just went out. It started small. Ava skipped dinner, said she wasn't hungry. Then she stopped sitting with us all together. She began waking up before dawn, leaving for school hours early. Her room stayed locked, her eyes stayed hollow. When I knocked, she'd say, "Busy, Rachel." Not Mom. Rachel. The first time she said it, I laughed, awkwardly, like it was a joke. But the second time, it felt like a knife. Even Daniel, my husband, tried to brush it off. "She's 17. It's what teens do," he said. But he hadn't seen the fear behind her eyes, or how she flinched when Mia reached for her hand. Every night, I'd stand outside her door and hear her pacing. Sometimes she whispered things I couldn't make out, other times, she just cried quietly, like she didn't want anyone to hear. Then one morning, I found her backpack by the door, packed so full it barely zipped. When I asked if she was going somewhere, she said, "It's none of your business." That's when I noticed something strange, a second phone charger peeking out from the side pocket. We'd only bought her one. Later that evening, a truck slowed in front of our house. A silver pickup, engine rumbling low. I watched from the window as Ava's curtain moved, just slightly, like she'd been expecting it. The truck stayed for nearly a minute before driving off. The next morning, she was gone before sunrise. At first, I told myself it was just school. But the light cracked when I called her teacher and learned she hadn't shown up for 2 days. When she finally walked through the front door that night, her clothes were damp, her hair tangled, and her eyes empty. I tried to hug her. She stepped back like I was fire. "Ava, what's going on?" I whispered. She stared right through me. "It's not about me," she said softly. "It's about keeping you safe." Then she brushed past and locked her door again. That line haunted me for hours, keeping you safe. Safe from what? When I couldn't stand it anymore, I called the local police and pretended I'd seen a strange car following kids near the school. I gave them the partial plate number from that silver truck. The officer said he'd call me back. He did. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "that truck's registered to Elliot Crane, age 42. Do you know him?" I didn't. But my daughter clearly did. Before I could even process it, I heard the front door slam upstairs Ava's room, and the sound of feet pounding down the stairs. By the time I reached the porch, she was gone. Out there, through the fog, headlights flared. That same silver pickup waited at the end of our street, idling like a shadow with a heartbeat. And then, she climbed in. The truck disappeared into the mist before I could move. My daughter was gone again this time, by choice. But something told me this wasn't teenage rebellion. It was fear. And whatever she was running from had just come back for her. I barely slept that night. Every time a car passed outside, I thought it was the silver pickup returning. Every time the wind rattled the siding, I thought it was Ava knocking on the door, begging to come home. But morning came, and she was still gone. Daniel tried to calm me. "She's 17, Rachel. Maybe she just needed space." "Space?" I snapped. "From what, us, or something worse?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. While he got the kids ready for school, I drove straight to the police station. The officer I'd spoken to the night before, Sergeant Dunley, looked uncomfortable when he saw me. "Ma'am," he said gently, "we can't open an investigation yet. She's a minor, but there's no proof she's in danger." I slammed the photo I'd taken on his desk. "That man in the truck, he's 42. Does that not count as danger?" He sighed. "We'll keep an eye out, but unless she reports something herself." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. On the drive home, I passed the cliffs overlooking Harborview. The fog was thick, curling around the guardrails like smoke. Somewhere below, the waves crashed against the rocks. I used to bring Ava here when she was little. She'd collect shells and tell me she wanted to be a marine biologist. Now, I just wanted her to be alive. When I got home, I found a note slipped under the front door. It wasn't from Ava, at least, not in her handwriting. Stop asking questions if you love your daughter. No signature. Just that. My stomach twisted. I looked up and saw a gray car at the corner, different from the truck, but idling just the same. I ran outside, but it sped away before I could catch the plate. That night, Daniel and I fought for the first time in months. He thought I was spiraling. You're scaring the kids, Rachel. You're seeing threats everywhere. I wanted to yell, because there are threats everywhere. But before I could, Mia's voice cut through the hall. Mom? Someone's outside Ava's window. I froze. Daniel and I rushed upstairs, but by the time we looked out, there was nothing, only footprints in the dew beneath her window. Big ones. Adult-sized. The next morning, Ava finally came home. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hands shaking. She looked older, like she'd aged years overnight. Ava, I said, trying to stay calm. Where were you? Nowhere, she whispered. Then she glanced toward Mia and Caleb, who were eating cereal at the table, and added, I told him not to come here. Who? I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled a folded paper from her pocket and pushed it into my hands before walking upstairs. When I opened it, I saw a printed photo, grainy, taken from far away. It showed me, standing at the kitchen window the night before. Someone had been watching our house. At the bottom of the photo was a message written in marker. Next time, I won't miss. I ran to Ava's room, but the door was locked again. Open this door, I shouted. Tell me what's going on. From inside, I heard her sobbing. Then, softly, he said if I tell anyone, he'll hurt you. Who, Ava? The man in the truck. Silence. Then, yes. I leaned my forehead against the door, trying not to cry. Sweetheart, we can go to the police. They'll protect us. No, she said quickly. You don't understand. He was the police. My heart stopped. What do you mean? But the lock clicked again, and I knew she wasn't going to open that door tonight. The next morning, when I went to wake her, her bed was empty. The window was open. And her phone was sitting on the pillow, screen cracked, a single unread message glowing in the dark. You shouldn't have told her. The morning Ava vanished, the air felt wrong. Still. Heavy. Like the world was holding its breath. Her bedroom window gaped open to the fog, the curtains twisting in the sea breeze. On her pillow lay her cracked phone and a single hair tie. That was it, no backpack, no jacket, nothing. I called her name until my throat burned. No answer. Mia started crying when she saw the empty bed. Caleb asked if his sister had gone away forever. I told them no, but the lie tasted like salt and fear. Daniel called the police while I drove every road leading out of Harborview, scanning faces at gas stations, the boardwalk, the cliffs. Everywhere I went, I kept hearing that truck's engine in my head. By afternoon, Sergeant Dunley stood in our living room again, hat in his hands. He spoke carefully, as if the words might explode. We've issued a missing person bulletin, Mrs. Morgan. We'll question anyone driving a silver pickup. I showed him the note I'd received, the one that said stop asking questions. He frowned. Threatening, yes, but not proof. Do you have enemies? No. Only a daughter who's terrified of someone you might know. That made him blink. When I mentioned Ava's claim that the man was once a cop, he went rigid for a heartbeat, then scribbled something in his notebook. I'll check our old employee records, he said, voice suddenly tight. After he left, Daniel paced. He wanted to believe Dunley, but I saw the doubt forming behind his eyes. For the first time, he whispered, what if she's right, Rachel? What if he really was police? Night fell early. Mia slept in our bed, clutching Ava's hoodie. I sat by the window, watching headlights move through the mist. Around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One line of text. She's safe for now. Stop looking. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. I called the number back, no answer. When I tried again, it rang once and went dead. I woke Daniel. We argued quietly in the dark. He said it might be a prank. I said it wasn't. Finally, he gave up and went to check on Caleb. I stayed by the window until dawn, waiting for another message that never came. By sunrise, the story had spread through Harborview. Missing teen flyers on shop windows, neighbors leaving casseroles like grief offerings. But gossip travels faster than compassion. Someone told me they'd seen Ava near the old boatyard 2 nights earlier. I drove there alone. The boatyard sat on the edge of town, half abandoned, filled with rusted hulls and gulls screaming overhead. The ground was soft with sand and oil. Near a shed door, I found footprints, small ones beside heavier prints that dragged slightly, like someone limping. Inside the shed, a chair lay toppled over. Beside it, a broken zip tie. And on the wall, scratched faintly into the wood, 3 words. "He's watching us." My breath caught. Ava's handwriting, I knew it instantly. I snapped a photo and sent it to Sergeant Dunley. He replied 5 minutes later, "Leave the area. Officers en route." But before I could leave, I heard tires crunch on gravel outside. A silver pickup eased into view, headlights off. I ducked behind a boat hull, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the ocean. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, tall, mid-40s, uniform jacket even though he wasn't on duty. The badge patch was torn off, but I saw the outline where it used to be. He scanned the yard with a flashlight. "Rachel," he called, voice calm, almost friendly. "You shouldn't be here." He knew my name. I stayed frozen, barely breathing. He walked closer, the beam sweeping past the shed door. "Your daughter's safe, because I'm keeping her that way," he said softly. "She just needed protection, from people like you who don't listen." My fingers fumbled for my phone, but before I could press record, he turned toward the sound of sirens in the distance. He slipped back into the truck and was gone, swallowed by fog. When the police arrived minutes later, they found only my footprints and the echo of his tires. Sergeant Dunley stared at the tracks. "That's not possible," he muttered. "That man was dismissed years ago." I grabbed his sleeve. "Who is he?" He hesitated, then whispered, "Elliot Crane. Internal Affairs investigated him for misconduct, and he disappeared." I felt the ground tilt beneath me. "He has my daughter." Dunley's jaw tightened. "Then we'll find him before he decides she's not worth keeping alive." After that night at the boatyard, nothing felt real anymore. I kept replaying his voice, calm, deliberate, almost kind. The way he said my name like we'd met before. But I would have remembered a man like Elliot Crane. The police set up a search grid, and Sergeant Dunley promised extra patrols near our home. Still, every evening the same thing happened, a car slowing by the curb, lights off, idling too long before moving on. Daniel stopped arguing. He installed extra locks, nailed Ava's window shut, and started sleeping on the couch, shotgun within reach. We were all breaking in quiet ways. Mia stopped drawing. Caleb refused to go to school. And me? I couldn't stop looking at my phone, waiting for a message that never came. Until it did. 3 days later, at 2:17 a.m., a new text appeared from an unknown number. "If you want her back, come alone." Below it, a GPS pin, deep in the woods north of town. My first instinct was to call the police. But something told me that if I did, I'd never see Ava again. So I left a note for Daniel and drove out before dawn. The road turned from pavement to dirt, then to gravel. Pine trees closed in on both sides, tall and black against the gray morning. The GPS stop blinked somewhere ahead, near the old Wellington Creek cabins, abandoned since the floods years ago. When I reached the clearing, my heart nearly stopped. There it was, a small cabin, half collapsed, smoke trailing weakly from the chimney. I parked behind a fallen log and moved quietly through the trees. Inside, I heard voices. Ava's, small, shaking. And his. "Do you think she'll stop now?" he asked. Ava's voice broke. "Please. She's my mom." I pressed my back against the wall, every nerve on fire. Through a gap in the wood, I saw her, sitting in a chair, hands bound with rope. Her face streaked with tears, lips trembling. Elliot stood across from her, calm as ever, sipping coffee from a chipped mug. "You don't understand," he said softly. "Your mother ruined everything. She cost me my badge. I just need her to listen this time." Then, as if he could feel me watching, he turned toward the wall, straight toward me. My breath caught. I ducked, crouching behind the porch. My phone buzzed, Daniel's call. The noise shattered the silence. Inside, the chair scraped, footsteps pounded. I sprinted toward the trees as Elliot burst through the door, shouting, "Rachel, don't make me do this." I ran until my lungs burned, weaving through the forest, ducking branches. Behind me, I heard him crashing through leaves, his voice echoing, calm no longer, now desperate. When I reached the car, I threw myself inside and sped away, gravel spraying behind me. My hands shook so badly I nearly drove off the road. A mile later, I stopped and called 911, gasping out the location. "Stay on the line," the dispatcher said. "Units are on their way." But by the time they reached the cabin, it was empty. No Ava. No Elliot. Only the mug, still warm, and a single piece of paper tacked to the wall. "You shouldn't have come alone." The next day, the police combed the woods, drones overhead, dogs tracking scents that led nowhere. They found tire marks, 2 sets this time. One belonged to Elliot's truck. The other, to mine. Sergeant Dunley confronted me that evening, exhaustion in his eyes. "Mrs. Morgan, are you absolutely sure you didn't speak with him before that night?" "I told you," I said, "I don't know him." He rubbed his temples. "You did. Years ago. You filed the complaint that got him suspended." The room tilted. "That's impossible." He slid a yellowed report across the table. My signature at the bottom. Complaint filed, harassment, Officer Elliot Crane. Date, 7 years ago. I couldn't breathe. 7 years ago, I'd testified against a cop who followed me home after a traffic stop. I'd forgotten his name. But he hadn't forgotten mine. That night, another text appeared. "I told you, I'm keeping her safe." But not for long. Then, seconds later, another image followed, blurry, taken in low light. Ava. Sitting in a car, her eyes wide, mouth gagged. And the reflection in the window, my face, like I was the one standing beside her. I stared at that photo until the screen dimmed. Ava's eyes, pleading, terrified, burned into me. The reflection of my own face in the window made it worse. Elliot was telling me, "You're part of this now." I rushed to Sergeant Dunley's office before sunrise. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "This came last night," I said, handing him the phone. He studied the picture. "If she's alive, we can trace the metadata." He connected the phone to a laptop, his fingers flying over keys. A map popped up, only one ping, 15 miles north, near Lake Rutherford. "It's wilderness up there," he said. "Old logging roads, hunting cabins. We'll send a team." But an hour later, dispatch reported a fire in that same area. A structure burned to the ground before officers arrived. I felt the blood drain from my face. He's covering his tracks. Daniel wanted me to stay home, but I couldn't. I drove behind the convoy until Dunley finally let me follow at a distance. The closer we got, the thicker the smoke. Black streaks rose through the trees, ash drifted like snow. When we reached the site, the cabin was nothing but charred beams and steam. Firefighters said no bodies were found, just melted rope and a half-burned photograph of a girl on a beach. It was Ava, age 9, holding a seashell. Dunley placed a hand on my shoulder. "He's moving her again." That's when my phone buzzed. No number. No message, just static and faint breathing. "Elliot," I whispered. A man's voice broke through, low and calm. "You shouldn't have brought the police. She's scared now. You made it worse." My pulse hammered. "Let me talk to her." More static, then a soft cry in the background. Ava's. "Mom?" Before I could answer, the call ended. Back at headquarters, text traced the signal. It had bounced off a repeater near Pine Hollow Road, 5 miles from the lake. Dunley ordered a perimeter search. Every cruiser rolled out, lights flashing, radios crackling. Daniel grabbed my hand. "Rachel, we'll find her." But all I could hear was that tiny voice saying, "Mom," proof she was still alive. We reached Pine Hollow by afternoon. The forest was dense, sun barely touching the ground. About a mile in, a deputy found tire tracks leading to an old storm cellar door half buried under leaves. When they pried it open, a rush of cold, damp air hit us. The flashlight beams caught rows of shelves, canned food, blankets, water jugs. Someone had lived here recently. And on the far wall, carved deep into the concrete, 3 words again. "He's watching us." Only this time, A fourth had been added underneath, shaky and new. "Help me," Dunley whispered. "She's been here within a day." We followed the tunnel deeper. It curved upward, ending at a wooden hatch. When we pushed it open, we came out inside another cabin, hidden under the trees, invisible from the road. The table was set with 2 plates. One half-eaten meal. Ava's sweater hung on a chair. My throat closed. She was here. On the counter, a radio blinked, a walkie-talkie, still on the same channel the police used. Elliot had been listening to us the whole time. Suddenly, it crackled. His voice filled the room. "You're close, Rachel. But not close enough." Dunley lunged for the mic. "Crane, surrender now." Elliot laughed softly. "You never learned. She came to me because she couldn't trust you." Static. Then silence. Outside, an officer shouted, "Fresh tire tracks heading toward the cliffs." We jumped back into the cars, sirens wailing through the pines. I gripped the dash, praying. At the edge of the overlook, we saw it, the silver pickup, parked near the barrier, doors open. No one inside. Then Dunley spotted footprints, one set leading toward the cliff, another turning back into the woods. He looked at me grimly. "He's toying with us." But I didn't care. I ran to the edge, calling her name. Far below, the surf crashed against rocks, white spray rising through the fog. And faintly, so faint I thought it was the wind, I heard her voice again. "Mom, help me." I leaned over the cliff rail, straining to hear. For a heartbeat the world held its breath, then that faint cry again, carried on the wind. "Mom, please." I tore past the barrier before anyone could stop me. Sergeant Dunley caught my arm. "Rachel, wait, if the ground gives way." I heard her. "She's down there." Below us the slope dropped into fog and stone, a mess of gull cries and crashing surf. Dunley radioed for a search rope, but I was already sliding down the embankment, dirt and pine needles tearing under my shoes. Halfway down I saw it, a scrap of Ava's red hoodie, snagged on a branch. "She's close," I shouted. We followed a narrow deer trail that curved beneath the cliff and opened into a shallow cave. The air reeked of salt and smoke. Inside, flashlight beams caught something, an old mattress, empty food wrappers, and the faint glow of a phone screen lying on the ground. The wallpaper was a photo of our family. Ava had kept it. But the phone was smashed, its SIM card gone. "She was here," Dunley said quietly. "Maybe hours ago." I knelt beside the mattress and found another note, scrawled on the back of a receipt. "He said you'll never stop looking." He's right. We combed the area for hours until radio chatter burst through the static. A deputy had found a trail camera hidden in the trees above the cave, its lens pointed straight at the entrance. Back at the command van, Tex downloaded the footage. The last video clip showed Ava stepping out of the cave at dawn, blinking at the light. Behind her, Elliot emerged from the shadows, resting a hand on her shoulder. He wasn't forcing her. She looked resigned. Then he turned toward the camera, directly at us, and smiled before switching it off. Dunley cursed under his breath. "He wants you to watch, Rachel. He's making this personal." By evening, the fog thickened again, wrapping the trees in ghost-white sheets. Daniel begged me to go home, to sleep, but I couldn't. Something about that smile, cold, certain, meant he wasn't finished. I sat in the car near the cliffs, headlights off, staring at the empty horizon. Around midnight, my phone buzzed once. No number. A short audio clip. When I played it, Ava's voice filled the car, trembling, whispering through static. "Mom, if you get this, don't come after me. He says it's safer if you stop." Then a man's voice, low and deliberate. "She understands now." The clip ended with the sound of waves and a door shutting. I replayed it again and again until tears blurred the screen. She was alive, somewhere near the coast. At dawn, Dunley called. We traced that clip. It was uploaded from a radio tower near the old Harbor Point lighthouse. The lighthouse had been closed for years after a storm cracked its foundation. Locals said you could still hear the foghorn echo even though the power was cut. We drove there fast, 2 cruisers behind us. The place loomed through the mist, white paint peeled to gray, the lantern glass shattered. Inside, footprints spiraled up the iron stairs. Halfway up, A rope dangled from a railing, and tied to it was something small, a locket. Ava's. I opened it and saw the tiny photo of her and Mia at the beach. She left this for us, I whispered. Dunley nodded. Or he wanted you to find it. At the top, we found fresh blankets, a radio battery, and a notebook filled with coordinates. Some were crossed out, others circled. He'd been mapping patrol routes, learning where the police searched so he could stay ahead. And on the final page, one line in Ava's handwriting. If you follow the light, you'll find me. We stepped out onto the balcony. Far offshore, through the fog, a faint orange glow blinked, too steady to be lightning, too distant to be boats. Dunley lowered his binoculars slowly. That's coming from Black Rock Island. Nobody's lived there in years. My heart was hammered. Then that's where he took her. He grabbed the radio. All units, prepare a marine search. But before the order could go through, the radio hissed and Elliot's voice bled across every channel, calm and close. Careful crossing the water, Rachel. The fog hides deep things. Then a long, deliberate click. Silence. By sunrise the harbor was wrapped in fog, so thick the water looked like glass. Search boats lined the dock, lights blinking faintly through the mist. Sergeant Dunley ordered 2 vessels to circle the East Channel. I went with the smaller one. I couldn't sit back anymore. Daniel argued to come with me, but I told him to stay with the kids. If anything happens, I said, they'll need you. We pushed off just as the foghorn groaned from shore. The sound rolled across the water, low, endless, like a warning. Half an hour out, the orange glow from the night before flickered through the haze. Black Rock Island rose ahead, jagged cliffs, a broken pier, the remains of an old keeper's shack leaning against the lighthouse tower. When our boat grounded, Dunley's team fanned out. I followed the footprints that led from the shore up the slope. Each step felt heavier, as if the island itself didn't want us there. At the lighthouse door, a faint cry echoed from inside. Ava. The hinges shrieked when we forced it open. The stairwell smelled of rust and seaweed. Halfway up, the beam of my flashlight caught a blur of movement. Ava stumbled from behind a crate, eyes wide, wrists bruised but free. Mom. I dropped the light and pulled her close. She was shaking, sobbing against my shoulder. He's still here, she whispered. He said he had to finish what he started. Before I could answer, footsteps echoed from below, steady, deliberate. Elliot Crane stepped into view, gun lowered but ready. Back away, Rachel, he said. I didn't want this to end ugly. Dunley raised his weapon from the landing behind me. It's over, Crane. Elliot smiled. You think justice still means something? She ruined my life. His eyes flicked to me. You told the truth, and they took everything from me. I just wanted you to understand what it feels like to lose control. Ava gripped my arm. He made me record those messages. He said if I didn't, he'd hurt you. Enough. Elliot shouted, raising the gun. 2 shots cracked at once, one from Dunley's sidearm, one from Elliot's. The sound exploded through the tower, glass raining from the lantern room. When the smoke cleared, Elliot lay against the wall, clutching his shoulder. Dunley's bullet had hit first. His gun clattered to the floor. It's done, Dunley said, lowering his weapon. Elliot's gaze found me one last time. You should have left it alone. Then he went still. Outside, rescue boats swarmed the rocks. Paramedics rushed Ava aboard while Dunley radioed in the arrest. I stood on the deck holding her hand as the fog thinned and morning light finally touched the water. She was safe. Bruised, terrified, but alive. On the ride back, she told me everything, the weeks of messages from a friend online who turned out to be Elliot, how he'd claimed to know secrets about me, how he'd convinced her that staying silent kept us safe. Guilt hit me like a wave. You tried to protect me, I whispered. Ava nodded weakly. I thought if I went with him, he'd leave you alone. I squeezed her hand. Never again. We talk about everything, no matter how dark it gets. She managed a small smile, the first in months. Okay, Mom. That one word, Mom, broke me. Weeks later, the house finally felt like home again. Daniel rebuilt the broken fence. Mia drew a picture of all of us under a bright sun. Ava started therapy, spent hours sitting by the ocean sketching waves. One evening she handed me a drawing, our family on the cliffs, the lighthouse behind us, the fog gone. On the back she'd written, "We found the light." I framed it and hung it in the hallway. Sometimes, when I walk past her room at night and hear her laughing softly with her brother and sister, I remember that awful silence when she was gone, and I whisper a thank you to whatever strength kept her alive. The fog still rolls in over Harborview, but it doesn't scare me anymore. Because now I know, darkness only wins if you stop searching for the light.